Each of us has a figurative atmosphere. Those individuals we choose to spend our time with. But we need to ask ourselves, are those people willing to celebrate with us on our best day and stand with us on our worst day? Have they provided you with life lessons that can serve as a protection for you? My atmosphere is full of those whom I choose to surround myself with because they make me a better person. My name is Donovan Woods, and the purpose of this podcast is to shine light on some of their stories. I've personally either overcome challenges or I'm continuing to endure based on what I've learned from each and every one of them. Welcome to In Your Atmosphere. So hey, Miss Toby, how you doing?
I'm good, Donnie. How are you?
I am good. What's the weather like out there in Detroit?
Cold.
Yeah. All right.
Just no snow, but cold.
Okay. So we are recording this in mid-November, late November 2021. It'll be released, this episode, in 2022. So just to give people kind of a perspective of where we are, just in case when this comes out, it's a little bit warmer. But I have known Toby since, I'll tell you the first time I met. I don't remember the year, but you eventually became Shelly, my wife's first roommate when she moved out. And I guess you were hers as well because you guys moved out at the same time. And the time I first remember hearing your name, seeing your face, actually, I don't remember what show it was, but you had went somewhere and you were on a talk show and Shelly had taped it. And I hadn't, I came over, I was at her house all the time with her brothers. And so she pops it in and she's like, there's Toby. And I'm like, who, growing up in the 90s and 80s, the only Toby I knew was from Roots. So I was like, what is she talking about? Is that LeVar Burton in the state? I mean, who is she talking about? And then that's when I discovered who Toby Tatum was at the time. You had energy. You were excited. They actually got you, I think you answered a question and you were made for the camera. You were not shy. And I was like, okay, Miss Toby Tatum. I like Miss Toby. I like Miss Toby. And I tell that story because one of the other interviews is with one of Shelly's earlier friends growing up. And she helped Shelly become a little bit more urban and dance and learn how to do a few things. And I feel like I should thank you for helping Shelly to kind of get outside the house a little more, take that dancing out where people could see it, as well as just live life. And that is what I love about you most, Toby. If you were to die today, I can say you have lived a great life. You have done things that you never put things off. Now, you may procrastinate, but you don't put things off, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense.
You get it done and your ideas are big and you pull them off. So I love you. I know Shelly loves you. And I only call one person my big brother. I only call one person my big sister. And that is you and your husband. So I truly mean that. And I have a question for you that I did not. I've kind of asked everyone the same question. I'm curious to what you will say with this series I'm doing called In Your Atmosphere. And it's people who I feel like have made me a better person, whether we talk every day, whether we talk once a year, every interaction, I'm a better person. Why do you think I included you in this?
I would say, between myself and Kevin, I'm definitely the one who's going to be in front of the camera out of the two of us. Yes. You say I'm your older sister, and I get it. I get it. But as far as being a peer, we've kind of lived our lives in sync. We dated at the same time. We got married within months of each other. We bought homes, our first homes within the same time. We've kind of gone through phases of life growing up together. So I know why that makes us family. And I just figured with this podcast, you were reaching out to family, and out of me and Kevin being the big brother and the big sister, and I'm the one that'll talk on camera.
Okay. All right. Most people don't get this question right. So that last part is actually true. I did ask Kevin first, and strictly because I do talk to Kevin a lot more. I'm not a phone person, but Kevin and I definitely connect, and I talk to him. I will say this is bad, but I definitely talk to him more when things aren't great in my life. So in the last, with COVID, like everyone else, a lot of things have been going on since 2020. And I've definitely spoken to him more frequently. And I want people to see how great he is. I want people to understand the type of knowledge he drops. He's not perfect, but for me, he sets a standard. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. But, and I say big brother, big sister, we are not that far apart in age. We're just literally just a few years, but it's more the admiration. So the real reason that my personal reason why I asked Kevin, and then he of course denied me because he don't want to be on camera, and why I went right back to you is because not because you're second, but because of our conversations, of our growth as individuals. We're not blood, but I'd say you and I would have more in common than maybe me and your brother, Tori. You live your life. You're the life of the party. You are confident. You speak your mind. You react the same way I do, and that's one thing. But what I cherish about you is that you also just look out for people. Like you could go down the list of people in Florida, in Virginia, in Michigan that you just look out for. And globally, literally globally, you always are looking out for people, not just people that people know, but like everyone, any age, any gender, any handicap, anything, you are always looking out for them. And I've always from a distance appreciated that. And I've also always loved how you've just kept up with people. A lot of people don't do that. You and I both know that. A lot of people do not do that. And you do. You keep up with them and you also just keep them in your life, maybe longer than what Kevin would prefer, but you just don't give up on people. And that right there is what I want to tap into and kind of just open up a little bit, because when I want people to hear this podcast, I do want to share with them. I want them to be better from just knowing you and to kind of get a little bit of glimpse into the type of people I surround myself with. Toby, what was it like for you growing up around the time when I met you? Not so much in Michigan initially, but in Northern Virginia, early 90s. Was there pressure for you to grow up? Were there expectations as to how you should act and how you should be versus what you wanted to do?
Well, around the time that you met me, I think I was just starting to meet myself. My family moved a lot. I was in 3 different high schools. I graduated from a high school where I moved in October of my senior year. So I wasn't in a yearbook. I wasn't, I was never someone, I was always the new person. But settling in Northern Virginia as I graduated from high school, and my brother was starting high school, we ended up being there for another 5 years. So my high school experience was different than Tori's. Like I said, I was in 3 different high schools, but Tori kind of went from middle school right through high school in one school. And settling into Northern Virginia was the longest period I ever lived anywhere. So I had lived in Michigan for the first 8 years of my life, but then I moved every 2.5 to 3 years until I got to Northern Virginia. And I was there for about 8 years. So by the time you met me in early 90s, I'm graduating from high school, but I'm trying to figure out who I am. I'm not being the new girl, but finally settling in somewhere and figuring myself out. So that's where I was in the early 90s. I was, just a young adult trying to figure out what I was going to do after school, after high school, wanting to live up to the expectations of the spiritual expectations that I had been raised to plan for, but also starting to live my own young adult life and embrace the moments that I wanted out of life. That's where I was.
And I mean, so Toby, just thinking the irony of you not being in a yearbook, you not having, voted most popular or voted most, to achieve this, to achieve that's ironic, knowing you now. It seems like you became that person after high school. Like you said, you were growing. And I have to look back sometimes. I wonder, sometimes people can be hard on young people and forget that they're young people. Because now you're still young. You're not even close to 50 years old. And we now go, oh, wow, she's a well-rounded, adult. But there are a lot of pressure that was on you at that time that had to be a lot, especially because even though you and Tori, your brother, are super close, you're not the same, especially publicly. Publicly, he's very, calm. And I always called him babyface. He has that demeanor. and you were more just outgoing. Was there pressure for you to kind of conform or to feel like, man, I'm always viewed as the quote unquote wild one?
I was always viewed as the wild one. And I think that still is in effect right now. I don't think I'll ever lose that persona when I'm compared to Tori. But one thing I will say about my parents embraced both aspects of both of our personalities. And they kind of were great enablers for my personality. While I moved all the time, my parents at the age of, I think I was 13, 14, started giving me plane tickets to travel anywhere that I wanted to go back to visit my friends. I think they always felt bad for me because they moved me so much. So from 13, 14 years of age, I would travel by myself back to cities to reconnect with my friends. So that's how now my friends Cecily, Anita, and Candace, Danielle here in Detroit that I would come, Aisha in New York City that I would go to, Shelly when Shelly got her first car, we put the car on the road to head to New York for parties because everybody couldn't fly with me. So it was time to road trip. So my parents always enabled that part of my personality. They allowed for it. They made room for it. They didn't know where it was necessarily going. They weren't always proud of where it took me. But they did allow me just to be the social butterfly that I wanted to be as a young person, though I couldn't do it maybe in high school and being in a yearbook. With connecting and being in different parties and gatherings in different cities, I look back now like, wow, that they let me do that. I was 14. I was 16, my first international trip. I went to Mexico by myself with some friends. My parents gave me lots of freedoms that I wouldn't give kids. I wouldn't give my kids the freedom they gave me, but I survived.
You did. You survived. And I think what's funny about that is sometimes you hear those stories, and when you're around the parents, let's say if I was at your engagement party or, when you've become mature or at the wedding or something else, some special event, you hear the parents kind of, oh, she was this, she was that. To be honest, that's not how your mom and dad have ever viewed you. Like to us, whenever they speak of you, it's with pride. It's, even Kevin, your husband, they've always spoken with pride. And your parents aren't perfect, of course, but I'm just saying, in spite of anything you went through, they always had your back. And I think that's key for anybody listening. You do need a support system. You may come across as the confident one, the one who has it all under control, the one who's quote unquote the leader, the loudest, or the one who gets hyped the most. But we all need people. We all need a support system. And I feel like it's funny. Your mom, her demeanor is so chill. I'm sure you know a different version than I know, but she was so chill. What effect did that have on you, like just growing up and even who you are now, just your mom's influence on you?
Well, that was, people always would tell me that I was like my father. So, when you look at your mother who's so chilled and who's so beloved and who's so respected and who's revered, and then people
she's
tell you... She's
literally Claire Huxtable. She's that person. Yes.
And she's gorgeous, but they would say to me, you look just like your dad. And, you are Willie Jr. And that can create a complex when I'm looking like, but I want to look like my mom. Why are y'all telling me I look like, but I get it now. My mother would always say, one of her phrases is that her and my father are very similar. They're as similar as a man and a woman could be. That was my mom's analysis of her and my father. And I get that now. My mom is her own form of a social butterfly. She's more laid back than I am. But she embraces and takes care of people that way you describe me, I get from her. She keeps up with people everywhere that we lived. And even my first childhood friends, the Cecily, Anita, the Candace, they were all my friends because my mom was friends with their mothers. So, So we did not create our own, we didn't make our own friendship. We inherited it from friendships that our mothers had. So my mom did kind of set the example, even as we moved, considering that she grew up in the South in Alabama and got married and moved to New York and never moved back South, but kept her friendships. And her maid of honor was a friend that she met at an international convention traveling on her own. So there are parts of my mom that, though she's reserved and laid back, when people hear the story, they're just like, oh, that's where you get it from. Oh, so I see myself in her.
Yeah, yeah. And just to kind of just pushing that just a little bit more, think about that. And we don't need to talk about your mom's age, but obviously she's older than you. Mm-hmm. And she had her maid of honor, someone she met on an international trip. There was no Facebook. There were no mobile devices. So she really had to put forth effort to keep that friendship going to that level. And I feel like that is you all day. I mean, you don't forget like anniversaries, you check in on people, you celebrate everything, whether it's end of a service year when you're in your ministry, whether it's, and I mean, what I mean by celebrate everything, let me clarify that. I don't know why you know this, but you just feel, you act as if tomorrow might not be here, and you celebrate each person and you give them their flowers while they're there. And that's something that means so much to me. Were you like that pre-Kevin, or is that something that maybe Kevin had an influence on you? I'm curious.
So yeah, I think I was like that pre-Kevin. Actually, I think that's one of the things that that created Kevin's interest to the next level. I remember when we were first starting to talk on the phone, in a dating talking. We had been friends for years, but his first time that he arrived, like to visit me, like to kind of check me out, and we're checking each other out to see if we really want to date. And I gave him a gift of something that he had mentioned probably to me years before. And I remember him just being blown away, like that I remembered this little thing that meant a lot to him and why it meant a lot to him. And it's interesting because I don't know that what I pay attention to, the quirky things that I pay attention to in other people. I don't know why I do that. I don't even know that I've ever felt it the same way. I don't know if because I was always the new girl, people don't know how to see those little things about me, but I know what makes people stand out to me, what I remember about them. And I
knew Kevin, that makes, I'll let you finish, but that if people knew your husband, that would make perfect sense. I didn't know that story. When he gets worked up, like it meant something. He does not do that all the time. So when he does, it means something. And for you to remember something, and just to give people perspective, and this is not me, being in love with Kevin's face, but he's a pretty man. Okay. He's a pretty man. He got good hair. He's very smooth. Yeah. That's my guy, right? I look at him like, Dad, Kevin got it together, but he's so much more than that you kind of forget he's a pretty dude. And so the sisters that I'm sure were barking up his tree were just that, barking up his tree. He's such a much more in-depth person. You dropping that on him.
Yeah, I can see that. He's that not the one that wants to ever be remembered for his outer appearance. In fact,
nope. I do. And that's why probably I don't have it. I do. I want that. I want it.
He actually said to me tonight, he was like, "Oh, I should have been 6'2". If I had been 6'2". Like, and I'm looking at him like, but
what else do you need, man?
But nevertheless, he does not. He definitely doesn't want to be remembered for his outer appearance ever. Like who he is inside, and that's one thing that he often will say. He appreciates the people who get to know him past the hype, because there's a lot of hype, and that if you're only coming towards him for the hype, he's dialed out, and you'll never get to know the real him.
Yep, that is very true, and it's definitely a precious relationship that I cherish. I didn't expect it, and I hold on to it because of that. I'm not going to keep you forever. I wanted to just see if you could drop some wisdom on people who grew up like you in terms of in a religious household, where it's a little bit more restrictive than everyone else and has freedom, or they're making decisions now as a young adult. Is it possible, be that young Toby that I met back in 93, 94-ish, is it possible to have fun in your 20s and still be, quote unquote, on the up and up, to still be progressing towards maturity and to not be ashamed of your youth, as it were?
Absolutely. I mean, I feel that when you believe something, Kevin has a phrase, and I'm sure you don't mind me stealing from something that he says,
Nope.
since he was the HOA's anyway. No, just kidding. He has a phrase. He says that there's a difference between a worshiper and a believer. And many times in religious households, you're taught how to worship, and you're taught all the things that you're supposed to do to worship properly. But when you figure out how to believe, it changes the motive behind your worship. And sometimes it takes some of us longer to figure out that we really believe. But the faster you can figure out if you really believe, it'll change the way you worship. So for myself, of course, I bumped my head up against the wall many times, but when it came down to whether or not I believed, by the time I bumped my head up against the wall enough, and I started looking and having to choose, I recognized I really believed. And once I believed, then it made me regret some of the decisions that I made, because because I wasted time. I wasted energies. I have scars that I didn't have to have because I really believed in the way of worship that I was choosing. So once you figure out why you believe something, then it makes it easy to do it because you believe it. And that's, as a young person, that's the challenge. Everything tries to distract you from becoming a believer, and just thinking that you just do stuff because you're going to please your parents, or this is my traditions, or this is, what my mom did, my grandmother did. But no, if you figure out what you really believe in, then it does shape your life differently. And looking back, I'm glad that I figured that out as a young person in the early 90s, because now looking back over the past 25 years, my life is shaped totally different because I started behaving as a believer.
Right.
And once you do that, it'll shape the direction that you go in. So the younger you can figure that out, the better. But it's never too late.
Absolutely. No, and I will say I've personally seen some of the friends that you have maybe not go the same path as you. You never just dropped them. I have people in my mind, but at the same time, some of them you've actually helped just by your actions, because they know you, because they know they can talk to you and get the real. Hey, I'm going through this. What do you think? And you're not going to say a cliche statement. Hey, well, pray more. Hey, well, maybe get focused on a hobby. Hey, you speak the real, like that's a real temptation. I've had that temptation, or I get it. It probably would be great, and it's people like yourself, Kevin, that are able to talk from one personal experience. Not that you have to have bad experiences to share this, but the more genuine you are, the more people want to hear what you have to say. And you can be kind of used as just a mentor. You can become big brother, big sister to a lot more people. And I know a lot of people look at you guys that way, as peers, as friends, not just associates, not just people they know on social media. You know a lot of people, Toby. But I know there's a difference in the people you know and the people that you know. So, I'm not trying to put those people on blast and say that your amount of followers or whoever aren't all genuinely your friends, but I think they're old enough. Those who know you know where they stand. So, and that's what you give them. That's also what your husband gives them. And I just want to know, are you proud of me for at least, for our episode? You see who's in the background. I got Maxwell right here just for you. I got him right there. I know you and him had a falling out for a couple of years. He wasn't giving you the production you wanted, but You're the reason I'm a Maxwell fan. So I fought it
for
many years.
Thank you very much.
I wasn't ready for that. I wasn't ready. I was still on Rockefeller, and I was like, Embryo, what is this? And now as a grown up, I'm like, okay, Toby, you were ahead of the game, just like Maxwell. So as you have always been, and I appreciate your time. I know that you are very busy. You are a minister. You're in the air, traveling everywhere. You're also a wife. You are a mother. You are a caregiver. You are a mother. You have a mother and father. You're a caregiver. That's not one of the scars. She's not a mother. She's not a mother. No. But she's a mother to a lot of young people that look up to her that way, that are very young. Even my little brother, who you and Shelly, I think, took to the circus back in the day. I never forgot that. So he doesn't remember, but I literally just talked about it this morning to him and Shelly. So
yes.
Do you please send it, because they don't remember it. Neither one. They're like, no, that wasn't Toby. Please do. It was a spree.
Right, my flower girl.
Thank you. Yes. I told her I don't.
I sure did.
This is why you're my girl.
Because that's what I remember you. That's my first memory of you. I came to.
That's right. You came to our house. I told Shelly you dropped off Jeffrey, and I saw you and Spree in the car, and I waved. I was like, "That's the girl from the, I don't know if it was Oprah or wherever you, Ricky Lakes. There was some show you were on." And I was like, "That's that girl Toby." Okay, all right. Superstar. All right. And if y'all ever have the chance, the opportunity, any listeners that are in the Michigan area that come into contact with the Kennedys, and they befriend you and you're in that circle, just know that when they offer you an invitation, don't take it lightly. It meant a lot, and they're going to do something big. It won't be just dinner. It might be on a lake somewhere. It might be skydiving. It might be something you never thought of, because they put that much thought into, I know, don't call me for that. They put a lot of thought into everything they do for the people they do. I won't share this for everybody. I'll just say that there was an event you invited Shelly and I to that we will cherish forever. It was literally before the world fell apart and maybe a year or two before it fell apart. And it was, to this day, one of the best. And I don't have a lot of enjoyment long term. That still is one of my favorite memories, just being with people I didn't know. A little anxious when I got there, but I learned immediately by the car ride there, anybody who's friends with Kevin and Toby is just as genuine as they are. So you can't roll with them if you're not a genuine person. And it's easy to get along with their friends because they're just like them in the sense that they are open sores or wounds, whatever you want to say. They show theirs, and they're also willing to just tell you about it and embrace you. Having your dad in the car with us on that trip was the funniest thing ever. I don't know if Kevin feels that way, but for me, it was one of the funniest drives I've ever been on. He keeps it real. So thank you, Toby, for taking time, or Tamara, for taking time out for doing this for me. And you are not my second. You and Kevin are one flesh. So I just got the other side of the flesh. So I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. And all of you listening, again, try to make friends like that. Make friends that matter, that in your atmosphere, whatever's coming through to attack you, to get you, whether it's your health, whether it's stress, whatever it is, you need people like this in your life. You don't have to talk to them every day for them to have an impact on your life. But when you do come into contact with them, also share something and give them something to get them through their day. So that's what it means to be a friend. And Toby, you are more than a friend. You and Kevin, you guys are family. Love you guys. And thank you for doing this. And I'll see you soon.